Hello and a very warm welcome to the second edition of Viewpoint. It's our job to unlock the key secrets of successful people so you can build a successful business. This time around, we're going to talk about opportunity, not only how to identify opportunity, but to look and assess the risk attached with opportunity. And sometimes we'll also talk about how to walk away from an opportunity. Not always easy, but sometimes you've simply got to do that. In that respect, I guess, we've identified an opportunity for ourselves. I'm going to be talking to Simone Bobo, who is the founder and executive creative producer of the creative agency Osu, and also the founding partner of Honor and Grace. It's a creative sports agency. I'm looking forward to what I hope will be an invigorating conversation. So, Simone, a very warm welcome. Before we start talking about opportunities, maybe let's start with your entrepreneurial journey and why on earth you would want to start your own agency. It's tough out there.
It is tough. So actually, me starting a business didn't actually come from me deciding, okay, I've had enough of the work life, I want to start a business. It actually came from when I was younger. My dad had two businesses that, from the beginning it went well, but with the recession coming in, and that was back in the early 2000s, I could see how much of a strain it put on my dad and his business. And that set me off completely. I was like, there's no ways that I would ever touch business. But, being a 9-to-5 worker in advertising at the time, I did a job in Ghana shooting an ad. And, when you're traveling away, you get S&Ts. I used mine on fashion, so I bought clothes. And then the designer that I bought the clothes from, he came to me with a box of clothing. He was like, can you sell these clothes, in South Africa? And I was like, sure. I've never had any sales experience. I had no other marketing experience other than me receiving scripts from my creatives at the time. And that went well. And then 1 to 3, I started doing my own shoots, doing all of that. Being in the industry, I saw that I was doing a lot of work with outside external suppliers, giving them work in terms of film directors and production houses. And I could always see that there wasn't much black female production companies within the film advertising industry, and that really piqued my interest. So I decided, let me try and see if I could potentially do something in there, and that's why I'm here. I eventually just decided to take the risk and start the business.
We're going to talk about how entrepreneurs spot opportunity, but in your own case, how did you spot your own opportunity? What did you see?
I was working at an advertising agency as a senior producer, and part of my work at the time was to find suppliers to produce the work such as TV commercials and stills. That would include looking for film production companies that represent film directors and photographers. So I picked up the gap in terms of looking at the suppliers we were awarding jobs to. Majority of them, and I'll safely say about 98% of them were white male. And that really ticked me off to realize that the content and the scripts that we were needing to produce were for a mass black market. And I felt also sitting in boardrooms, when you're looking at treatments, for example, seeing how the film director or the photographer would employ that they miss certain great nuances that only we as black people would be able to articulate quite accurately and quite humorously, depending what the script vibe is. And that made me realize that it's time to actually, formulate a company or find young black talented film directors or photographers who are not tainted with the typical advertising brush, but come with fresh ideas, fresh energy, and a fresh way of producing work that we wouldn't have thought of or systematically would do. And that's how my company came about.
Nice to see that it was spurred by a little bit of indignation as well, which is important.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about identifying opportunities. What are the important elements that an entrepreneur needs to look out for when spotting the chance?
The most important things, and I can't pinpoint to one thing, so hence the plural, that an entrepreneur needs to look and spot for, I believe is, is there a need for something that it is that you want to do? Is it for the community? Every business and any business always feeds a community. So identifying the community that it is that you want to create the business for. And in typical, business terms, it's called a market. So I think those are the most important things that you need to look for.
So spotting the need and looking for the market. So patently in your journey with this particular venture, you'd spotted the need, but a little more tricky when it comes to making sure that an actual market existed. How did you go about doing that? Was it simply a question of market research, or, as great entrepreneurs often tell me, it's also about that gut instinct? You just knew. Bit of both? What was it?
I think it erred more on the gut, that little voice or that little thing in your stomach where you just feel that this is the right thing to do. That also pushes you to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to take the leap of faith in myself as well as the community I'm going to service. In my instance, for example, in my businesses, is that the biggest, when you see a gap where there's a disadvantage towards a certain individual or group, and you have the advantage to be able to assist and help that person, that's what that's the gap that you're trying to close within the business world. So for any entrepreneur, if you want to start a business, it's a selfless thing that you're going to do. You have to look at the needs of others, and in that way also you using your talents to be able to fill that gap, to marry that needs of the next person.
I would suggest to you that gap, or the community as you refer to it as, is not always self-evident, one, and two, it changes as the business grows, surely.
It does change with time. Things keep on changing all the time. For example, in my business, particularly the film production business, going the younger route in terms of looking for younger talent was feeding towards creating content that will reach a younger talent. You can't be doing a commercial that you have a bunch of oldies like myself producing for a younger generation, and then we're still doing things that will say lols, we still think LOL is still cool. It's not the case. It's forever transforming, it's forever changing. So you always need to be able to create a business where you know that you're talking to somebody right now. And if you look at social media, digital platforms, things are changing all the time. You can't be looking at something and think that, something that was cool 5 years ago would still be relevant today. The market is forever changing. So you have to produce work that will appetize and lure that market so that you can be, as they say today, within the market.
I also noticed that you focus on the minutia. As we were sitting down to prepare for this interview, and on the other side of our conversation there are cameras, you almost had a Velcro approach to it. You were looking at the cameras, you were analyzing everything. That's what an entrepreneur's got to do, is that you've got to be involved in every single micro facet of the business. Even when you're not working, I noticed it was happening here.
The thing is that you can't start a business and think that, oh, I'm the CEO and I'm going to delegate, right? Because there's this beautiful thing that you learn about business that you don't want to mess up. It's your holy grail. It's called a cash flow, right? So if you don't know from where you're buying your toilet paper for the office to the biggest computers,
and whether it's 1 ply or 2 ply.
Exactly. And you will be like, no, it's fine. As a CEO, you can spend it, sign it off. But then come month end, when you're trying to work out staff salaries and paying bills, you realize I'm off completely because you decided to buy the 2 ply toilet paper. So yes, it is important that as an entrepreneur, you have to know at least majority of what's going on in your business and be as hands-on as possible from the beginning. Obviously, that's when you are working in the business, right? Because there's a difference, because when you're working in the business, you are very hands-on. When you're working on the business, you're kind of like looking for different opportunities so that you can pivot and expand. So it's very important that when you're starting off, you have to just get your hands dirty.
I want to talk a little bit about risk now. Critical that you have an appetite for risk. How do you deal with it? particularly in the early stages of an entrepreneurial journey?
My question to an entrepreneur is, what do you have to lose to not take the risk? That's the most important question. If you don't have much to lose or you have very little to lose, then take the risk, because there's nothing more that will eat you up every single day for not taking that risk, for not at least exploring and saying, at least I've tried it. If it fails, you learn from it, because that's the beauty of taking a risk. You go towards something, you say, I'm going to try this thing, and you try, and if you see it doesn't materialize, you keep your eyes open and your ears open for any other peripheral opportunities that may come through. So a risk is a beautiful thing, because it opens up so many other opportunities that you didn't see, at the end of the day.
What did you have to lose?
Not much, really. Nothing, actually. Nothing. I gained way more. I mean, I went from being an employee to now 5 years paying my own salary.
But in the beginning, it was a little cold, wasn't it? It gets warmer.
Look, it was very warm at the beginning, because you hype yourself up. You're your own hype person. I was my own hype woman. I would wake up every day and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. Everybody is going to use my services. Until you realize that there's this thing of building trust. And what do I have to do to build trust? Oh, I don't have a show reel. I don't have anything to show. I just have me and my company. I thought that, I would be able to sell my company just with me and my talent. But then as you get into the business world of the industry that you're in, you have to walk, unfortunately, the line that everybody else has walked in your industry. So it starts off warm, and then it starts becoming real very fast.
Are there opportunities you think you've missed because you have been concerned about the risk?
Thinking about it now, yes, I have lost.
Sometimes you've got to walk away.
I've lost in the past, but I never let it go. You risk something, you say, okay, fine, if I'm going to do this, it's fine, but I'm going to come back to it, because it's an itch that you want to scratch, and you just want to be able to make sure that you've absolutely done everything that you can to make sure that you've at least tried to do it, There were opportunities, and big opportunities, that I've lost, but I'm still trying to, fulfill those opportunities even today.
In conclusion, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours, that once you've put the 10,000 hours in, you are then an expert in your field, and you're able to play the game a whole lot better. Patently, you've done the 10,000 hours, or at least very close to it. So you're now able to think about the next step in terms of entrepreneurship, having established the foundation. How do you apply your mind to that?
I don't think it would be any different from how I would apply my mind to when I started. The next step, obviously, is growth, expansion. Once again, you look for the need and you build something new. So you always employ the same thing, but the most important thing is that you learn not to do the same mistakes that you did before, and you try to do better all the time. Some advice that I didn't take at the time, I'm now realizing I've paid gravely for it within the business, and now I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe you need to do that again, So it's the same things that I would employ, but just make sure that I tighten things a bit better. I don't trust everybody as much as I used to, for example, and keep quiet a little bit more until everything is ready for you to reveal. I think when they say you have to walk in silence for a little bit, that's what one has to do.
Well, you certainly haven't walked in silence today. You've given us some very, very valuable insight. Simone Bobo, good luck to you.
Thank you.
And what an absolute pleasure it has been talking to you right here on Viewpoint.